And there's a fight between Cale Yarborough and Donnie Allen.
20 years of trying, 20 years of frustration. Dale Earnhardt will come to the caution flag to win the Daytona 500.
They touch! Craig even you! 1,000ths of a second he beat Boyd.
Okay, a 60 checkered flag waving, it's over, it's Earnhardt.
107.7 The Bronc and 107.7thebronc.com proudly ranked the best college radio station in New Jersey by the New Jersey Broadcasters Association, live from the Killarney's Public House studios. This is NASCAR Nation. Welcome back, NASCAR fans. I'm your host, Joe Passero. Before we begin today's show, remember, you can follow us on Twitter at NASCAR Nation RU. You can follow 107.7 The Bronc on Twitter at 1077 The Bronc FM. This past weekend was the opening weekend for NASCAR. No, not the Daytona 500, the unofficial opening, where the best of the best go head-to-head on one of the most famous circuits in the world, Daytona International Speedway. It's the Advanced Auto Parts Clash. Since 1979, the event's been run, and it was an exciting one, the first segment, and things calmed down. In the second segment, we have the race review for you. We'll start off with segment 1 of the Advanced Auto Parts Clash of 2018. Austin Dillon, remember, this is not traditional qualifying for a race. They go ahead, they draw for position, so Austin Dillon's team drew the pole position, so he started out front and led the field to the green flag at Daytona to start the Advanced Auto Parts Clash, but it went ahead and led lap 1, no advantage to Denny Hamlin, who started second, or Austin Dillon. They were side by side throughout the entire first lap. Lap 2, Denny Hamlin clears Austin Dillon in turn 1. He takes the lead, and by lap 5, most of the cars had come into a single file line with Kyle Busch. He was making really aggressive passes on the outside of that single file line, and it was really risky. So Kyle Busch certainly making moves, certainly showing he's going to be a contender for the Daytona 500, that he knows how to drive in these restrictor plate races. Lap 7, Kyle Larson gets loose after slight contact with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He made a great save. So what happened was, everybody's running single file, and Kyle Larson, he gets a run on the 17 who's in front of him. He tries to go low because he thinks if he side drafts, he's going to pull that car back, and he's going to slide his car into that empty slot and move back in line, not lose any time in the draft. Well, what ended up happening was Ricky Stenhouse anticipated that, moved a little low, and he actually the rear quarter panel clipped Larson's nose, and so Larson got real loose, but he was able to save it, went to the back of the pack, but still having a car in one piece, much better than what could have been the result of that. Lap 9, Chase Elliott got a great run on the back straightaway, moved from 6th to 2nd just from the time that they were on the back straightaway, and was able to get to 2nd next lap around. Chase Elliott able to grab the lead from Denny Hamlin, and Chase Elliott, one of last year's Can-Am Duel winners. We'll talk about the duels in a little while, but last year's first Can-Am Duel winner, Chase Elliott, taking the lead at Daytona, a position he's very familiar with in the super speedway, the restrictor plate racing. Lap 14, Austin Dillon got side by side with Chase Elliott, battle for the lead. He was able to grab the lead, but it wasn't long before Elliott made a bold move. He went from the top of the track all the way to the bottom and back to the top, got a big run on Austin Dillon, passed him for the lead. Chase Elliott back out front. Joey Logano got side by side. He took the lead from Chase Elliott with just a few laps to go left in the stage. But the strategy of the race, remember, this is a race where it's very much nobody cares where you finish unless you win, because no points on the line, it's all for the money. So everybody was sort of strategizing, thinking, what can we do here? How can we get to the front? And so a lot of drivers, though, were thinking long term. They wanted to be in the front at the start of stage 2 or segment 2. And so Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, almost every other driver that I've mentioned so far in the show went down pit road, got their 4 tires, fuel, back out. And remember, these pit stops were very slow. They're not the typical 12, 13-second pit stops you're used to seeing from last year, because there's one less crew member. I think the fastest stop that I have recorded was 16 seconds. That's a lot slower. That's almost 4 seconds slower on average. from what we're used to seeing. So certainly that rule it's very visible, the difference now. So keep an eye on that for the Daytona 500, because pit stops will be a big factor. And really for this first half of the year, pit stops are going to make a huge difference. Not that they don't regularly, but I think now more than ever, it's really going to make a big difference. So look out for those the pit stops. So everybody comes in except 4 cars: Kevin Harvick, Kyle Larson, and a few others. They take the lead. They stay out, and I think Harvick actually won the stage, or Larson won that segment of the race. And under that caution, Jimmy Johnson, he got a penalty for driving through too many pit stalls coming into pit. And again, that's just purely for safety. You could argue that, yes, nobody was pitting behind him, so it was not a big deal. Still, you have to adhere to those rules. So Jimmy Johnson gets pit road penalty, sent to the tail end of the field. Drivers got ready for segment 2, a 50-lap segment. The first one, 25 laps. Second segment, 50 laps, and that is it. Lap 29, Brad Keselowski leads the field to the green flag. Remember, he started dead last. He drew the last starting position, and he was able to strategize his way. He drove partway up there, but he was really able to implement strategy. He and Paul Wolfe are two of the best at it, one of the best combinations on pit road. So was able to go get it and take the leads for the first time at lap 29. And lap 32, Chase Elliott gets shoved out of second, and Chase Elliott, he and Keselowski got, I believe, 2 tires and fuel, or just fuel, and many of the other drivers had taken just 2 tires and fuel. So Chase Elliott got shoved out of second by Eric Jones. Ryan Blaney swallow him up. He falls back in the pack, and he dropped to 9th, and this was really fun to watch. This was one of the best moments of the race. He dropped to 9th, but manipulated the draft in such a way that he was able to get a run here, a little run there, and 1 lap later went from 9th to 1st, and he grabbed the lead right out of Brad Keselowski's hand. But as he was side by side with Brad Keselowski going into the front straightaway on lap 33, Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch, and Jamie McMurray got 3 wide, with Kyle Busch on the middle. Kyle Busch on the bottom, Kurt Busch in the middle, and Jamie McMurray up top. And the way that they just so slightly touched each other. The 41 of Kurt Busch did, and the 1 of Jamie McMurray. And Jamie McMurray was sent spinning into the grass and into the outside wall. Luckily, not a lot of damage. He hit the wall pretty soft. Anytime you hit a wall, it's not going to be soft, but relative to some other hits we've seen in past speed weeks, yeah, that was a soft hit. Luckily, the car didn't sustain too much damage, just minor, but it was not only cosmetic damage. They did end up retiring the car, but for that time being, they sent the car back out. So, Kurt Busch, Jimmy Johnson, Kevin Harvick, Ryan Newman, Austin Dillon, and Kyle Larson all pit for fuel. Now, that was more of a safety. That was more of an insurance, because at Daytona, it's very typical that you can run about 48 laps. This segment's 50 laps, so these drivers are asking, where are we going to find those last 2 laps? Saving fuel by shutting off the car and coasting in the caution, during the caution time. And but these guys, they wanted to insure themselves. They wanted to have that insurance policy and say, okay, we have a little bit of extra gas in the tank. We're good. So those guys came down pit road. Meanwhile, lap 38, Brad Keselowski, they restart. Brad Keselowski able to get the lead back from Chase Elliott, who had just gotten it before the wreck. Ryan Blaney uses a run on the inside to grab the second spot. That gets taken by Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Busch. And on lap 42, Martin Truex Jr. attempts to take the lead, had no help, and fell back. Meanwhile, Kyle Busch leaves a hole at the bottom of the track, and Ricky Stenhouse begins to pass him. Now, Stenhouse went below the double yellow line, and NASCAR issued a pass-through penalty to him. This is one of the things I really wanted to talk about this week because it's very typical of me to support NASCAR and support their calls. I don't support that call that they made. I would have called it that Stenhouse was. So let me try and describe the situation to anybody who might have missed it. So at Daytona and Talladega, on the inside of the racetrack. So, NASCAR makes left turns, so they consider the left side of the racetrack on the inside. There's a double yellow line. It works just the same as the highway. Don't go over it, basically. Anything to the left of that double yellow line is out of bounds. You cannot advance your position. You cannot advance your position when you go below that double yellow line. And so you have Kyle Busch is in the middle of the track. Ricky Stenhouse is behind him in the 17. Stenhouse gets a good run and ducks low. Kyle Busch sees this, and so he tries to go down and defend. Stenhouse had to drive lower, though, because they were side by side. It was either they were going to wreck or he was going to go below that yellow line. And so the replays that I saw, the way I saw it, and I looked at a lot of replays after the race, was that Stenhouse was already, his front fender was up to the quarter panel and almost at the rear tire of Kyle Busch. So I don't really, in my eyes, he was in the act of passing when NASCAR, obviously NASCAR saw it different, but he was in the act of passing. Now I want to throw this back to 2003 for a second here because there was a very controversial pass that happened at Daytona's sister track, Talladega, that ended up being for the win, in fact. And a lot of people supported that call was when Dale Earnhardt Jr. was attempting to pass Matt Kenseth and Kevin Harvick. Matt Kenseth came down low. Dale Jr. was in the act of passing. He was already side by side. He easily could have wrecked the 17 of Kenseth. He didn't. He went to the bottom of the racetrack, went to the lead. And NASCAR deemed that was a clean pass, that, he was forced below that double yellow line. And I think that's really sort of what bothers me because I feel like Stenhouse was really forced below the double yellow line. It wasn't a matter of, he didn't just drive down there and take that position. No, he had to run. He got up to an appropriate place on the car that, he could have wrecked Kyle Busch. And you know what? He should have, if the NASCAR was going to make that call. He should have wrecked Kyle Busch. But nevertheless, that's what NASCAR called. And so NASCAR says that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. got to serve a pass-through penalty for passing below the double yellow line. That was lap 42. Lap 48, Jamie McMurray retires his car. Drivers once again line up single file on that outside. And Ryan Newman, because of that, lost the draft. Ricky Stenhouse gets lapped. And Penske begins to run 1, 2, 3 with Brad Keselowski up front in first, Ryan Blaney in second, Joey Logano in third. All those Team Penske cars, Fords. So everything's pretty quiet, pretty calm. 20 laps to go. Winds down to 10 laps to go. Car's still single file, but plans are formulating, and you could tell because the Joe Gibbs teammates with the 78, they're technically aligned to 78, and the Joe Gibbs cars, they were all falling to the back of the field except for Kyle Busch. He ruined that plan for the Gibbs cars. They were all falling to the back of the field. They were going to make a run to the front. Harvick lost the draft, and 2 laps later, Brad Keselowski picks up this huge piece of debris, bigger than I've ever seen on a racetrack before. I don't know what the heck it was. It almost looked like when you go to school and your teacher's got like I don't know how to describe it. Like if whiteboard had a layer and was flexible, that's what it looked like. I don't know what to say. Or like or maybe like cooking wax paper for cooking. That's sort of what it looked like. But just this huge piece of debris just flies onto the grill. And of course that's no good because it's blocking the airway. Now again, it did look light, so it looked like air couldn't get through it, and it didn't cover up the entire grill, so air was still getting to the radiator to cool the engine. But, if you cover it, we've seen it, especially with Brad Keselowski, and especially on these plate tracks before, you pick up a piece of debris, that engine overheats, you're going to blow your engine, because it's not going to be cool. It's not going to be cool, and that just causes a problem. So, the question was now, does he fall in behind a teammate? Do they do a swap real fast where he can go and, rely on one of his teammates? The laps clock down, lap 75, white flag. Austin Dillon, Chase Elliott, Martin Truex all dropped to the bottom of the track in an attempt to make a move. Keselowski still got this giant piece of debris on, and Ryan Blaney tries to move to the inside, try and go past Keselowski. He doesn't have any help, drops back to fourth. On the backstretch, Kyle Larson gives a huge push to the 41. The 41 moves down low and takes over third. Then he gives a huge push to the 48 of Jimmy Johnson, and bam, right into the wall. Jimmy Johnson hard into the wall. It's the 7th year in a row he has crashed out of the Clash. Mr. 7-time is not now 7-time for 2 reasons. His 7 championships, 7 consecutive wrecks in the Clash. The wreck collects Johnson, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott's number 9, Casey Kane, Kyle Busch also involved, but Kyle Busch kept driving because that's Kyle Busch. And Brad Keselowski goes on. They fortunately, NASCAR did make the good call to let the drivers race back to the finish line. I'm very happy they made that call, but it didn't make much of a difference. Brad Keselowski wins the race for Team Penske, that number 2 Ford. Joey Logano finishes second, Kurt Busch third, Ryan Blaney fourth. Top 4, all Roush Yates engines, Fords. Remember, Ford won the Daytona 500 last year. Those Fords, they're racy. Look for Fords during the Daytona 500, and I will talk about that again later. Austin Dillon finishes 5th, Denny Hamlin 6th. Kyle Busch, after being involved in that wreck, he sort of just limped his way around, still finished 7th. So good effort by Kyle Busch there. Eric Jones finishes 8th, Kevin Harvick 9th, Kyle Larson 10th, Ryan Newman is in 11th, Jimmy Johnson finishes 12th, Chase Elliott, his teammate, finishes 13th. Defending series champion Martin Truex Jr. finishes 14th, Casey Kane in his new number 95 15th, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. 16th, and Jamie McMurray 17th. We're going to go to a commercial break, but when we come back, we'll talk about Daytona 500 qualifying, we'll talk about the duels, and we'll talk about some of the racing that we saw during the Clash and what that might mean for NASCAR's first points race of the season. Stay tuned here on 107.7 The Bronc and 107.7thebronc.com. 107.7 The Bronc and 107.7thebronc.com proudly ranked the best college radio station in the great state of New Jersey, live from the Killarney's Public House Studios. This is NASCAR Nation. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. If you're just joining us, remember you can follow us on Twitter at NASCAR Nation RU. Follow 107.7 The Bronc on Twitter at 1077 The Bronc FM. And if you're just joining us, we just went over the 75-lap cash dash called the Clash. Lots of rhyming words there, huh? We went over the Clash. Brad Keselowski won this year's event, finishing 1-2 with his teammate and last year's champion of the event. That is Joey Logano. So, we'll talk about some of the things. So, a lot of the things that I saw in the Clash were very interesting. So NASCAR eliminated the rear ride height rule. And so typically when you go to a plate track, which is Daytona or Talladega, the rear of the car is lifted off the ground, right? And so NASCAR did away with that rule so that all the teams could put that rear end as close to the ground as they want to. And man, all those cars had their rear... The rear quarter panels were almost touching. Actually, Jamie McMurray in qualifying and during practices, his car was scraping the ground. They had to pick it up. And so that was why that's such a big thing. Well, a lot of the drivers were reporting that their cars were really loose in qualifying and practices and even in the Clash, that their cars were really loose. Since the track, Daytona, of course, since it was repaved in 2010, and the first time they used the repavement was in 2011. Since that repaving of Daytona, it stayed very smooth. Handling really hasn't been much talk. And of course, when the Generation 6 car came into effect in 2013, there was a little bit more talk about the handling and everything, but that's just because it's a new car. And of course, just like any other racetrack, handling is going to play a factor. But this year, more than ever since this repave has gone through, handling is going to be king. And drivers need to understand that. And I think probably one of the 17 drivers who was in the clash, I think, will probably end up winning the Daytona 500. Because it's so important, because when everybody's complaining that the car is loose, you need to know what adjustments to make, how much of those adjustments to make, what you need to do to get your car running good again, because you will not win this race this year if you have a car that the rear end keeps stepping out towards the wall, because we saw Jimmy Johnson almost wrecked quite a few times. Truex got into the front straightaway wall a few times. It's just, these are typical super speedway things, but they're elevated this year and they're much more visible this year. And I think they've really, it's gonna make a difference both on the Can-Am dual races and in the Daytona 500. That's the big thing I think that came out of the clash, is that these drivers, their cars are going to be handling worse than they have for at least the past 7 or 8 years at Daytona. They're going to be handling worse than for a long time. They've gotten used to this smooth surface that, I can turn the wheel this much, and they're very good at it. No, all that's thrown out the window, because this year more than ever, you're going to see the cars bobbling a lot with that air. It's going to upset the car in the draft. There's going to be a lot going on in the middle of the race, and so drivers are really going to have to watch out, and crews as well. Crews are going to have to be very aware of the situation that they're putting their drivers in, especially spotters. So look for that on Sunday, all the weaving, the bobbling. The second thing is they raised the spoiler height. Now, because they let the rear ends drop to the ground, they raised the spoiler height a half an inch, I believe it was, a half an inch additional spoiler on the rear end. And the spoiler, it punches that big air, that hole in the air, and it keeps it, it keeps the air open for another car to suck up to you and get right behind you. After the, I'm sorry right now, I'm trying to do this with my hands right now. I'm trying to think about how the draft is working, and it's just not correlating into words. But so you got the draft, and on the spoiler on the first car is putting a hole in the air, and so that second car can come up and suck up to that rear end. Essentially provides less air resistance, allows the car behind you to go faster. It actually does help the car in front too, but not as many benefits for the car in front, unless of course it's the last lap, then hey, you're going to win the Daytona 500. But so that was another thing that we noticed. So I mentioned Chase Elliott going from 9th to 1st and from 6th to 2nd. A lot of the drivers touched on it, but they're getting much bigger runs this year with that bigger spoiler. It's punching a bigger hole in the air, and the cars are the closing rate is much faster than it has been, and so that's something you're really going to have to watch out for, especially at the front of the field. All the passing, all the dicing, and if somebody hits somebody else too hard, you're going to end up in the wall, just like Kyle Larson did to Jimmy Johnson on the last lap. So definitely look for those two things, the closing rates and just how aggressive drivers can get with the runs they have, and the handling of the cars. I expect a lot of audio on the scanners to be about handling on the cars. All right, so that was the clash. Before the clash, they had Daytona 500 qualifying, where all the drivers who enter the Daytona 500 can qualify. And of course, qualifying is unique for the Daytona 500 because you then have the Can-Am dual qualifying races to follow up single car qualifying. So single car qualifying, I put my money on Alex Bowman. I was watching him in practice in the number 88, and he was just so fast. He was only running single-car laps. Now, that does concern me considering the way the drivers were complaining about their cars during the clash. I think he'll probably want to stay up front in his dual race. But, man, he was running single-car laps. He was running 194 and really, really fast laps. So I had my money on him for the pole. And sure enough, Alex Bowman starting from the pole position in row 1, and this is his first Daytona 500 in a few years, I think, maybe since 2015. So Alex Bowman starting on the pole in the number 88 for the 88 team. Now remember, Dale Earnhardt Jr. drove this 88 last year. The 88 team won the last 3 restrictor plate pole positions. Dale Jr. won it at Daytona last year and Talladega in the fall. And then, of course, Alex Bowman winning this one 3 in a row for that 88 team. Starting on the outside of row 1, no surprise, Denny Hamlin. Jimmy Johnson in 3rd, Kyle Busch 4th, William Byron 5th, Eric Jones 6th, Daniel Suarez qualifies 7th, Kevin Harvick 8th, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. won 2 restrictor plate races last year. He's starting 9th, Chase Elliott starting 10th. And I'm not going to go down this whole lineup because I will reiterate it eventually when we're talking about the lineups for the Can-Am duels. But very important to know. So Alex Bowman, Denny Hamlin starting on the front row. Now, the Can-Am duels. So they're Thursday night, so 2 days from now. And so that's when the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series races a pair of twin races that used to be called the Gatorade Twin 125s. When the cars could reach 125 miles on a tank of gas, they bumped it up to 150 miles. And now Can-Am sponsors them. Boom, you have the Can-Am dual races. They're qualifying races, which essentially finalize the starting lineup for the Daytona 500. Here's how they work. So first, and obviously this has already been done because I just talked about it, drivers compete in Daytona 500 single car qualifying. One car goes out on the track at a time. They run their laps. They come back to pit road. Their fastest time stands. The drivers who qualify in an odd number spot, so first, so Alex Bowman, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th, so on, all the way through 39th, will race in duel 1. If you qualified on the outside, which is an even-numbered spot, so 2nd, Denny Hamlin, 4th, 6th, 8th, 10th, 12th, 14th, so on, all the way back to 40th, then you race in duel 2. So that's how they determine which duel you are in. So each Can-Am duel, 60 laps, 150 miles, and so basically you could see what I just read, those top 12 positions, you could essentially see that entire thing get changed. Only 2 people have locked in their starting positions. That's Alex Bowman on the pole and Denny Hamlin in 2nd. If you qualify on the outside of the outside pole or the pole position for the Daytona 500, you get that spot. You don't have to worry about finishing the duel in 13th because you will still start on the pole. However, the only way that those 2 drivers can be removed from their spots are basically if they crash the car or if there's an engine change or something. It doesn't usually happen. It has happened before, but realistically, Alex Bowman will end up starting on the pole unless he crashes the car or changes the engine, and Denny Hamlin will more than likely end up starting 2nd, my bad. As for every other car on the track, the stakes are pretty high. Every spot that you move up is 1 car closer you are to starting to the lead car for the Daytona 500. Every car you pass, that's 1 car. So there's 36 teams who hold charters. Those charters essentially lock drivers in. So the 36 teams with charters, they're just running the race to determine where they're going to start the Daytona 500. Any other teams who do not hold a charter here's how that works. And actually, I don't really need to go through this because there's only 40 entries this year, so everybody will make the Daytona 500. But typically the way it would work is that the best finisher in each duel without a charter locks their team into the Daytona 500. The last 2 spots are determined on speed from Sunday. So luckily we don't have to worry about that. It's not going to be complicated. I mean, that is part of the fun in following the duels, but we don't have to worry about that complication. So it's just as the cars, every car that you pass, you're going to start 1 row up ahead. So if you finish first in your duel, if you'll start in row 2, because Alex Bowman, unless Alex Bowman or Denny Hamlin win the pole, then they'll still retain their position. So the finish, I've said it, the finish of the duels set the starting grid for the Daytona 500 and so forth. In addition, and this is still relatively a new rule, one that I almost completely forgot to mention, the duels, typically in the duels, that first car who qualifies, so if you're Alex Bowman or Denny Hamlin, where you're locked into your position, all you have to do is not wreck the car. NASCAR, typically, those drivers who would have their position pre-locked in, they would just drop to the back of the pack and they would ride. And they're like, I want to start up front for the Daytona 500. I want to keep this car. It's fast. I like it. You guys go ahead up in front and duel and wreck yourselves. Whatever. NASCAR didn't like that. So what they do, they are going to award points to the top 10 finishers in each race. Now, this is not the official first points race because not everybody is receiving points. And so if you win, you get 10 points. If you finish second, 9. Third, you get 8 points. So on. So there are points at stake. It's a head start for the Daytona 500 for the entire season. And we certainly know how that can certainly make a difference, how many points you have at the end of the year. So that's the duels. And, I'll run you through the starting lineup for each of the duel. For Duel 1, Alex Bowman is on the pole. Jimmy Johnson will start second. William Byron will start third. Those top 3 cars, all Hendrick Motorsports cars. In fourth will be Daniel Suarez. Fifth for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Joey Logano will start sixth. Alric Almirola will start seventh. Blaney in eighth. Kurt Busch ninth. Brad Keselowski 10th. Ryan Newman will start Duel 1 in 11th. Jamie McMurray will start behind him in 12th. Darrell Wallace Jr. in his first duel will start 13th. Ty Dillon starts 14th. Chris Buescher 15th. Brendan Gaughan 16th. Matt DiBenedetto will start 17th. Jeffrey Earnhardt will start 18th. Mark Thompson in 19th. And David Reagan will start in 20th, last in Duel 1. The way they finish will determine the way they start the Daytona 500, the inside row only, and then they'll run the second duel. That's Denny Hamlin will start on the pole for duel number 2. Kyle Busch will start beside him in second position. Eric Jones will start in third, and those top 3 cars, those are Joe Gibbs Racing cars. They're starting 1, 2, 3 for duel 2. Kevin Harvick will start 4th. Chase Elliott 5th. Paul Menard 6th. The 3 of Austin Dillon will start 7th, Clint Bowyer in 8th, Casey Kane 9th, Trevor Bayne, the 2011 Daytona 500 champion, will start 10th in Duel 2. Kyle Larson will start 11th, Michael McDowell in 12th, Martin Truex Jr. in 13th, Danica Patrick in 14th, AJ Allmendinger will start 15th, Justin Marks 16th, DJ Kennington in 17th, David Gilliland in 18th, Cole Whitt in 19th, and depending on if the 23 car ends up running the race, because I saw it in qualifying, I think I saw it in practice. Or no, he didn't qualify. I think I saw him in practice. But if they run that car, it'll be Greg Holding, and he will start last, 20th position in his dual race. So, there you go. There's your lineup for the duels. There are the duels. Let's clash. And after Thursday night when they run those duels, that means there's one so important race. It's called the Daytona 500. We've been waiting all off season for this. The wait's killing me. This anticipation. Just want to watch it. We'll go through some headlines real fast before a commercial. Last Wednesday, NASCAR officially announced changes on the damaged vehicle policy for 2018. The first change to the policy increases the crash clock that the pit crew has to work on the car from 5 minutes last year to 6 minutes this season. I think that's a good move. I think that'll help keep more cars in the competition. Just that extra minute of time that everybody will have to work on the car, I think, real good move for NASCAR. In addition, NASCAR stated that should too many pit crew members service the car while on the crash clock, the team will not be forced to retire. They will be issued a 2-lap penalty. So last year, one of the big things at Kansas, Matt Kenseth's team sent too many members over the wall. The NASCAR told him, nope, you got to retire. That ended up being the race. He got eliminated from the playoffs. And had he stayed in the race, that probably wouldn't have happened. So I think this is a good move. I think, unfortunately, it's a year too late. But, it's better late than never. So that's the first piece, and probably a really important piece. Following that announcement, NASCAR also shared that in the opening round of qualifying at short and intermediate tracks, drivers will have 15 minutes to make a qualifying attempt rather than 20 minutes, as it was in 2017. I think that's just trying to, reduce TV coverage, reduce a little bit of costs here and there. Time is money and money is time, and so you get an extra 5 minutes back. That's $500 that you save. I don't know what they spend. NASCAR has also officially revealed the stage lengths for each race in the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and Camping World Truck Series. For the full list of stage lengths, you can go to NASCAR.com because that's way too many to read off in the next 2 minutes. Last season's third-place finisher in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series standings, Austin Cindric, has solidified that he will drive full-time in the Xfinity Series in 2018. It was announced at the end of last season that Austin Cindric would share the number 60 car for Roush Fenway Racing with Ty Majeski and former teammate Chase Briscoe. This past week, though, Austin Cindric stated that the races he does not drive the 60 car. He will pilot either the 12 or 22 for Team Penske. Cindric will race 24 of the season's 33 races with Penske, the remaining 9 with Roush Fenway Racing. And on Sunday, NASCAR held Monster Energy Cup qualifying for the Daytona 500. And I just wanted to go over this. I know I've said that Alex Bowman won the pole, but he ran a time of 46 seconds. 46.002 seconds, 195.64 miles an hour, an absolutely blistering lap. And, man, that was such a fast lap. I really can't believe it. He was like a whole tenth and a half ahead of Denny Hamlin, who qualified second. But so that's all your headlines for this week. We're going to take one commercial break, and then we'll run you through how to watch this year's Daytona 500 and Can-Am Duels. Stick around here at 107.7 The Bronc and 107.7thebronc.com. 107.7 The Bronc and 107.7thebronc.com. Welcome back, everybody, live from the Killarney's Public House Studios. This is NASCAR Nation. All right, so if you're just joining us, we're going to be off the air in a few minutes. But, nevertheless, we still have more time. We've talked about the Clash and how those drivers really sort of learned what they need to do in order to really have a good chance of winning the Daytona 500. Of course, starting out with don't wreck your car. Brad Keselowski won that race, by the way, if you missed all that and you missed us. Alex Bowman on the pole and Denny Hamlin starting second. They should be good to start first and second for the Daytona 500. Everybody else will have to compete in the duels, the Can-Am Duels. That's Thursday night. And, yes, that is Thursday night. All right, let's get into the programming. Thursday, February 15th, that's this upcoming Thursday. So exciting. 11:35 a.m. to 12:55 p.m. NASCAR Camping World Series has its first truck practice at Daytona. From 2:25 to 3:25, the trucks will go back out for a second practice, and from 4:35 to 5:25, they'll have their final practice for the Truck Series. 7 o'clock p.m., the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series will start Can-Am Duel number 1, and at 9 o'clock, of course, should everything keep with schedule, at 9 o'clock, they will start Can-Am Duel 2. That's all Thursday night. Friday, February 16th, that's this upcoming Friday. Still exciting. 12:05 to 12:55 p.m., the NASCAR Xfinity Series will hit the track for practice on... Oh, I'm sorry. You can watch all of this on Fox Sports 1, by the way. I completely forgot to say that. You can catch everything on Fox Sports 1 or the Fox Sports Go app. 105 to 155 is Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series practice on Friday. 205 to 255, Xfinity has final practice. And 305 to 355, Monster Energy Cup cars go back out for practice. 4:30 p.m., single truck qualifying for the Camping World Truck Series on Fox Sports 1 again starts at 4:30, and 3 hours after that at 7:30 the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series will kick off its season with the Next Era Energy Resources 250. That's 100 laps, 250 miles. You can catch it on Fox Sports 1 or the Fox Sports Go app. That's at 7:30 on Friday. On Saturday, at 9:35 a.m., NASCAR Xfinity Series will qualify. At 12:05, the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series will enjoy their final practice. And at 2:30 on Saturday, the NASCAR Xfinity Series will kick off their season with the PowerShares Triple Q 300, 120 laps for 300 miles on Fox Sports 1 and the Fox Sports Go app. And of course, the day that everybody has been waiting for since Homestead in November of last year. It's Daytona Day, Sunday, February 18th, 2:30 p.m. The NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series races in the first and biggest race of the season, the Daytona 500, 200 laps, 500 miles on Fox and the Fox Sports Go app. You check your local listings with that time. All those times are Eastern, but definitely check your local times to make sure that those line up. And of course, a lot of really good looking cars. So I'm 1 for 1 this week. Well, actually, I didn't call anybody on the Clash. I probably should have, but I'm 1 for 1 on the calls that I have made. Alex Bowman won the poll, predicted it, and he's up front. For the dual races, to me personally, Duel 1 looks a lot more competitive than Duel 2. So if there's going to be a wreck, it's probably in Duel 1, because I think there are a lot more guys who could really shake things up and have a better shot of winning the Daytona 500. Those are more racy cars. I definitely think the top three, the Hendrick cars, Alex Bowman, Jimmy Johnson, William Byron, definitely think they have a shot at winning. Suarez, pretty good. Stenhouse definitely has a shot at winning. And I'll tell you, the Fords, Ford has won they won Talladega, they won all four last year. I don't remember in 2016, they won Daytona, the 400. They've won I don't know, I think they've won about 6 in a row. Ford's really good. Their restrictor plate program. I should have looked that stat up, but I think they're 5 of the last 6 or 6 in a row or something like that. So for the races, I would definitely, especially the 500, I would definitely put my money on a Ford. The Camaro and the Toyotas are definitely racy, and they're definitely challenging the Fords. But man, I will tell you, those Penske cars, Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Penske just has their plate program dialed in. So definitely look for those guys on Sunday. I'm going to go out here and make my picks. I think Duel 1 is won by Alex Bowman. I think the guys who start up front are going to finish up front. I think Alex Bowman wins Duel 1, Denny Hamlin wins Duel 2, but the big race, the Daytona 500, I'm really feeling like either Brad Keselowski or Joey Logano is really, Brad Keselowski or Ryan Blaney is going to get the job done. Ryan Blaney, the runner-up in last year's big event, and Brad Keselowski, very good at restrictor plate racing. I think he has 5 wins at Talladega, not 4. 5 wins at Talladega. 2 now at Daytona, but formerly only 1 at Daytona. But I'll tell you what, those Penske cars, if they survive the mayhem that ensues, I really do believe that you'll see them up front. So, and then of course for the duels, Denny Hamlin, he's just so good at restrictor plate racing. He's so good, and he has such a fast car again. So really, to me, I wouldn't see it as a surprise. Last year, he won the second duel past Dale Jr. with about 2 to go maybe. And so I think Denny Hamlin probably wins his duel again. And Alex Bowman in that 88, he looks really good. And especially what's key with those guys is that they have 2 teammates right behind them. They will start the race with 2 teammates right behind them. So, Alex Bowman to win Duel 1, Denny Hamlin to win Duel 2, and I think Daytona 500 is going to be a Penske car. Won't commit to which one because honestly any one of them can win it. But thank you everybody for listening to NASCAR Nation. I hope you enjoyed today's show. We will be back next Tuesday this slot. We will talk about the Daytona 500. Happy Daytona Day, everybody. All right, thanks for listening here on 107.7 The Bronc and 107.7thebronc.com. This has been NASCAR Nation.